After testifying in some of our country's most famous murder cases, Dr. Henry Lee and producers reenact crime scenes in his TV show. Trace Evidence, the case files of Dr. Henry Lee, airs on Court TV beginning in 2004. Each episode reconstructs how Lee solved a case during his decades as a forensic scientist.
Is he talking about me?
One segment features a murder case where Henry Lee examined the forensics 3 years after the murder.
He was more concerned about himself and his ego and his reputation than about the truth.
Kerry Myers went to prison for nearly 3 decades after Dr. Henry Lee was called in to be an expert forensic witness.
Henry Lee was the man who helped put me in prison wrongfully.
I'm just one of the witnesses. I did not say he did it.
We are New Orleans bound.
We traveled to Louisiana to talk to one of Henry Lee's biggest critics, Kerry Myers. Away from the noise and hustle and bustle of the Big Easy, we traveled just a short drive, about 10 miles across the Mississippi River, to Harvey, Louisiana. It's a quiet town that in 1984 was shocked by the gruesome murder of Janet Myers, a 25-year-old mother of 2. Kerry Myers says he's been waiting for a Dr. Henry Lee case to be scrutinized because for years,
Nearly 27 years, just short of a couple of months of 27 years.
he sat behind bars for the murder of his wife, Janet. And he says Lee is partly to blame.
They put me in prison for something I didn't do, and they knew it. As far as I'm concerned, they knew it well.
Alan Gautreaux writes about Janet Myers' brutal murder and what led up to Kerry Myers' conviction in his book, Dark Bayou, Infamous Louisiana Homicides.
If you look at the crime scene photos, you can't help but feel angry at who would have done this to somebody like that.
Drawers ransacked, items broken, and a lot of blood. Just beyond the foyer, police find Janet dead on the living room floor, her head beaten in by a baseball bat. And the Myers' 2-year-old son is found beaten too.
It looked like that there was one heck of a fight that went on.
News reports call the case bizarre.
I hate that word, bizarre. It was real to me. It wasn't bizarre to me. To someone who, watching from the outside and what it became.
February 23rd, 1984. Myers says his friend, William Fontenelle, strikes him with a baseball bat when he walks in the front door of his house. The bat breaks his arm, and the two then fight off and on for upwards of 10 hours. Both told police they didn't notice that Myers' wife was in the house deceased. Each blame each other for her murder.
3 people walk into the house, 2 of them walk out. Who do you believe?
Police initially charged Fontenelle with her murder, but his trial ends in a hung jury. And in the aftermath, the case is at a standstill, and there's a lot of public pressure to find out who was responsible for Janet Myers' murder. So 3 years after her death, state prosecutors ask well-known Dr. Henry Lee to look through the evidence. They know he's a busy guy, so they send him and his staff in Connecticut 200 pounds of boiled crawfish as extra incentive to examine the case. Dr. Lee is considered an expert in bloodstain pattern interpretation. Lee agrees to help and reviews photos and evidence from the crime scene at the crime lab in Connecticut.
Did something change in the prosecution of this case when Dr. Henry Lee was brought in?
Yes.
After a new look at the case and Lee's analysis, the state charges Fontenelle and Kerry Myers with killing Janet. Myers goes from being the prosecution's star witness in the first trial to becoming a suspect.
So the plan, as we know it today, was put them both on trial.
The Friends' joint trial finally happens in 1990, 6 years after Janet's death. Lee testifies he found previously undiscovered blood droplets on Kerry Myers' pants and believes the blood pattern meant Myers could have been close to Janet when she's murdered.
What the Myers folks are saying is that 2 blood evidence teams before didn't find the same evidence you did. So how did you find it years later when you didn't initially even go to the scene?
No, I did not. The detective provided me those pictures, videotapes. I only can base the information somebody gave it to me.
A 2009 study by the National Academy of Sciences says blood spatter evidence is hard to pin down. And the author of the book Junk Science agrees.
Blood spatter evidence, bite mark analysis, hair microscopy, the list is considerable, and new junk science is invented every day.
If you use today's viewpoint to judge something happened 38 years ago, you're not fair.
It was bizarre enough to begin with, but when he came in and started testifying to all this stuff, I think he convoluted the case for everybody else.
Both Myers and Fontenelle are found guilty and convicted of killing Janet. To this day, Myers maintains his innocence.
That's a book that was never finished. Our lives were a book that was never finished. Should have been a long book with a lot of chapters, and it wasn't.
Myers' sentence is commuted in 2016. After more than 20 years in prison, the Board of Pardons unanimously recommends his release based on his time and conduct in prison, and that Janet's family testifies in support of his release.
I love my son-in-law to come home. He's here.
The original detective in the case does too. In a letter, the detective says it's the only case he's handled in which he has doubt about the guilt of someone. He said the original blood experts on the case never implicate Myers. It was only when the prosecution brings in Dr. Lee that Myers is arrested.
I'm just one of the witnesses. Scientific evidence, interpretive scientific evidence. I did not say he did it, nor I say Fontenelle.
I guess because just Kerry Myers is saying, you know, for you it's a case, for him it's his life.
That's not up to me. He have to prove he's innocent.
Yet, Lee reenacts Janet Myers' murder on his TV show Trace Evidence, saying in his own words that it was Myers who beat his wife with the baseball bat.
We watched your show, Trace Evidence, and this was you.
Kerry, I don't know if have you seen Trace Evidence? Any of his show?
No, I haven't.
This is here, you can see.
The afternoon, when Meyer walked into the house, saw Jenna, we say, laundry basket. They start verbally arguing. That argument become physical. He probably hit Janet. When you watch that, does it?
I have no idea what he's talking about. I mean, honestly, is he talking about me? Mm-hmm. A laundry basket.
Because have a laundry basket, have some clothes in there, have some blood in there. So somehow this laundry basket involved. She was washing. The clothing probably, I did not make up this laundry basket. It's at the scene.
In the episode, Lee shows himself investigating a crime scene he never saw firsthand and introducing an item he never testified about, a laundry basket.
He does a show about this, portraying what he thinks happened the night.
Yeah, years later, in a cold environment, you know, from what? From pictures? I lived it. I still live it.
You don't ask her, where's my wife? You don't hear the baby cry? Watching TV, fight, beat each other up again, then take a break. Just think about that fact. So of course, again, that's my reconstruction.
Myers points out that Lee has been questioned about mishandling crime scene evidence in the past.
Someone who's known to have manipulated evidence. Someone is not a hero. Your integrity matters.
Myers is now the deputy director at the Louisiana Parole Project in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He advocates for folks in situations like he was.
There's a lot of great success stories.
The nonprofit provides legal representation and residential reentry services to people with life or very long sentences.
Many of them are giving back to their communities. Good morning, Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project, appearing on behalf of Gerald Lewis this morning.
They were cleared of all charges in 2020 after a judge ruled that forensic scientist Dr. Henry Lee gave false testimony about blood stains on a towel.
How in the world do you put a price tag on spending half of your life in prison for a wrongful conviction?
Henning and Birch, what would you say to them now?
You should interview both of them.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Sure.
Do you prefer Ralph or Ricky?
Ricky.
I figured.
Only people that call me Ralph is corrections officers, so.